Hey everyone, so this video is going to be a little bit different than usual. Most of my videos are a little more scripted, or I'm a little more animated in the presentation, or at least I have some detailed bullet points of exactly which points I'm going to make and what I'm going to say. But for this, I really only have a couple bullets, and I'm really going to speak from the heart because I think it's important that what American Express is doing right now is told to the world, so at least we can have good information and be able to make decisions with our credit cards that help our financial future instead of hurt it. And I think there's something really deceptive about what American Express is doing right now. And they've been on this road before, but they're really doubling down on it now. And it's taking advantage of people like you and I who might talk about credit cards and give American Express press when we make videos about their new cards or when we write blog posts about them. And really, that's part of a decisive strategy to take advantage of unsuspecting customers. And I think it's important that we talk about that. So I'll use this most recent Amex Gold card update as kind of a case study for the point that I'm making. But really, you can see this with a lot of the cards that they offer. And this isn't coming from an Amex hater. I love my Amex Platinum. I use it all the time. I love it for travel, right? I love it for the lounge access and all the credits I get. I do get value from it. And I'm not an Amex hater. I love Amex. But in this latest Amex Gold update, and with some things that they've said at the earnings calls, it's become very clear what this really scammy thing that Amex is doing. So just to fill people in who don't already know, the American Express Gold card just got a refresh. And it used to be a card where you had a $250 annual fee, and that would get you 4x back on dining and US supermarkets. And then on top of that, it would give you $10 a month in Uber credits towards Uber, obviously. So if you use that every month, it would equal $120 back a year. And they would also give you $10 a month as what they called a dining credit, which could be used at Grubhub and the Cheesecake Factory and a few other places. So people have been saying that, listen, if they give you that $240 a year in credit from the $220 a year credit, so together it's $240, and you use that against the $250 annual fee, really you're only paying a net $10 to get that 4x back on supermarkets and dining. And that's technically true, and people poked holes in that calculation because, oh, well, if you take an Uber when you would have taken a Lyft if the Lyft were cheaper, right? Maybe that Uber credit isn't worth the full $120 because you're paying for the more expensive option, so maybe it's worth a little less. Or maybe you're only going to order something from Grubhub because you have the credit, but otherwise you wouldn't have ordered it from Grubhub. You would have gotten it in person or over the phone or somewhere else where it wasn't marked up. So those were good arguments to be made, but that's not what I want to focus on right now. What I want to focus on right now is the refresh that just happened to the Amex Gold card. And sure, the thing that's getting most of the attention is that they added a new color, a white gold color, which looks incredible. Although the two people I've seen that have said they've seen it in person have both said they weren't so impressed, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not able to speak to that. But what I noticed is, or first let's just talk about what the upgrade is. So what they upgraded is they took the $250 a year annual fee and they raised it $75 to $325 a year. Fine. The response that most people give to that is, okay, let's see what the actual upgrade is, and we'll see if the value they give us for that extra $75 in annual fee is going to be worth paying the extra $75 in annual fee. And so then they look at the value they just gave. Right off the bat, they give you a $50 twice a year annual Resi credit, which means that any Resi restaurant, if you pay for it with your Amex Gold card, you'll get $50 that can be used between January and June, and then $50 that can be used between July and December. And that's incredible, especially if you live in an area with a lot of Resi restaurants like New York City, for example, or I think Boston also has a lot. And then you have places where it's less valuable, like on the West Coast, especially in San Francisco. I know there aren't too many, or in rural areas, there usually aren't so many Resi restaurants. But in places like Boston, New York, I think even DC, there are lots of restaurants that are on Resi, and you might be able to value that $50 twice a year credit at the full $100. So right off the bat, you could be saying, listen, I just got $100 of value for a $75 raise in the annual fee. That's a no-brainer. Of course, I'm going to get this card now. But that's not it. They also offered and added to the card a $7 a month Dunkin' Donuts credit which means, again, especially for those of us on the East Coast where there's just tons of Dunkin' Donuts, right? That's another $84 a year potentially if you can just go to Dunkin' a couple times a month in the morning to get your coffee instead of Starbucks, or if you're already going to Dunkin', that's incredible. And that's great. But the problem is that these headlines that this generates now is not that this card costs $10 a year after the credits, which is what the headlines were when it was a $250 annual fee and only $240 in credits. Now you have the $240 in credits that you used to have, plus $100 in resi, so that's $340, plus another $84, so you're looking at over $400 in credits for a $325 annual fee. Seemingly now, this card looks like a better deal. And that's not really true. And you and I think this is obvious because the people who are watching YouTube videos like this are people who generally think this through a lot more than the average person. But the average person doesn't do a cost-benefit analysis so much before deciding to get a credit card. And a lot of people just get credit cards because they hear that this card has a reputation for being the best restaurant card, or the best grocery card, or the best food card. And I'll give you an example. I run a company where we basically built an app where we tell you which credit card to get based on your actual spending, and we make it really, really easy for you to figure out exactly which credit card to get. All of the things you'd see in these blogs, we would actually put into our algorithm so that you can strategize your credit cards properly and be able to get the right card. Okay, you have no idea how many people I talk to who have used our app who say things like, I got this card because I heard it was a great travel card. And the card that they got was the Amex Platinum. And they have no idea if that card's credits are actually worth it. Half the credits they don't even know exist. They just love that it gets them into the Centurion Lounge, and they think that means it's a premium travel card. And so there are so many people who just don't listen to the cost-benefit analysis of the card, and they don't even think about it. So you could be saying at this point, okay, fine. What's the big deal? Some people don't think everything through. That's their fault. What's Amex doing wrong? And so here's where it gets a little bit malicious or scammy, if you want to call it that. And so here's a quote that this is from the Thrifty Traveler. They put this piece together after Amex's most recent earnings call. And here's their quote. American Express previously promised investors that it will revamp 40 of its credit card products throughout 2024. Okay, so they're going to revamp 40 products. But now what does that mean? So here's a direct quote from the CEO of American Express. And here's what he says. Refreshes, meaning refreshes of a card, really do help to drive demand. It drives awareness and it drives more engagement with existing cardholders. It's been a strategy that has worked very, very well for us. You can rest assured all 40 or approximately 40 will be done, referencing the amount of credit cards that they'll refresh. And what he's saying here, if you listen to it carefully, is that, listen to this portion of it, refreshes really do help drive demand. Okay, fair enough. But here's why, and this is the scammy part. It drives awareness and it drives more engagement with existing cardholders. It's been a strategy that has worked very, very well for us. So American Express as a company is not a company that takes risks. They're a company that looks at the numbers and figures out in advance whether or not these numbers will pay off for them. And if they will pay off for them, then they'll make the change. So American Express would not be making these changes to the card out of the kindness of their hearts to give us more value. They're doing it because they understand that refreshing the card in this way by raising the annual fee $75 and jumping the annual credits by way more than that, that more people will not take advantage of those credits than will, such that the increase in annual fee will earn them more money than providing the credits will. And sure, they might get discounts from Dunkin' Donuts because they brought them customers, or from the resi restaurants because they brought them customers. So maybe it doesn't cost them the full face value of the benefit, but either way, it's going to cost them more than the annual fee. And so they're making a bet that lots of people will not use these credits. But the reason that the strategy still works for them is because they count on people like you and I to look at this credit card and recommend it to our friends and tell them this is the best dining credit card, this is the best grocery credit card, it's the best food credit card. They count on those headlines coming out, and when they refresh the card, they get a new set of headlines, and they get us to say this is an even lower net effective annual fee because there are even more credits than there is annual fee. And so they end up building this aura and this image around the Amex Gold card that makes sense for enthusiasts who really want to take advantage of the card, but that just doesn't make sense for the average person who's not going to get the right amount of value for it. And sure, you could say if someone used PointWise, which is the app we made, to just figure out which credit card to get, and they trusted our recommendations because they look at your spending and figure out where you'd actually get value from it, sure, those people don't have to worry, and those are also casual users. But for the casual users who don't use a service like PointWise, you're not going to be able to differentiate between the Amex Gold card of last week and the Amex Gold card of this week. And the Amex Gold card of this week is not the best dining card. It's not a great card for beginners because of a low annual fee effectively after the credits, because most people in most areas in the country won't even be able to use a lot of these credits. And so it's incredibly disingenuous and this is the point I'm trying to make in this video, it's incredibly disingenuous for American Express to update cards just for the sole purpose of manipulating consumers into thinking that this is the best restaurant card just to squeeze more annual fee dollars out of them by giving them credits that they've modeled out and know that they won't take enough advantage of to make it worthwhile for the consumer. But by doing these refreshes, by getting everyone to talk more about the new shiny white gold card than they talk about the new credits, they're building this aura of exclusivity, a limited time. There's only a limited number of these white gold cards coming. They're giving this aura of exclusivity, of this is the best dining card, and they're getting an entirely new press wave, and the customers who currently use the card are not going to get rid of the card because most of them don't even look at their annual fees. That's the truth. And so you have this really big issue where American Express is just taking advantage of all the positive press to build this image of a card that doesn't really exist anymore. And I wish that they would get back, and this is my plea to American Express, if someone on their team is watching this video, is to please go back to making credit cards that are good for the average consumer, because in the long run, those cards will still be profitable to you, and they'll be even more profitable because you'll build goodwill with your customers. Your customers will be more satisfied with you because they won't feel that every time a new product comes out, you're just trying to hope they're not one of the people who takes advantage of these high annual fees. And I hope this aura of exclusivity you build around your cards, you back up by them actually being the best card instead of manipulating the media into focusing on shiny white versions of the card when really you just made it a less attractive card for the average person.